The Steelers are back at practice, and they are going through some things getting ready for the Bills next week. But there was a big fight that broke out at training camp. We'll talk about that fight and a new move on the offensive line that could switch up how things look going into the season opener. All that and more right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. It's a Tony Tuesday with Tony Serino, so it's going to be exciting to have him back on the show right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. As always, also remember the Locked On NFL podcast is previewing every team and every division with the help of Odyssey's lineup of NFL experts all the way through September 8th. There are preview episodes on the feed that you can listen to right now. Follow Locked On NFL Today on the Odyssey app or wherever you get podcasts. I'm Chris Carter here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it with some Steelers news.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose on all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can follow this show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Odyssey, and of course, our YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That really helps us out. If you want to help us out even further, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts with a positive comment. When you do both at the same time, you get a special shout out at the end of the show, just like my man Tony Serino, because every time he comes on Tony Tuesdays, we say, it's not just any Tuesday. It's time for a Tony Tuesday. That's our special intro for Tony Serino. Tony, how you been, man? It's good to see you as always.
Absolutely happy to be here. We got a lot of Steelers stuff to talk about. Like you said, a big fight at camp.
Big fight. Now, I am not privy to say how this fight went down.
Yeah.
Or who won this fight, or what have you. I am allowed to say what the Steelers said themselves. It's the NFL rules of you can't report what happens in practice, but you can say what people say happened at practice, what the players, the coaches tell you. So we got to be delicate there. But what we do know is that Chase Claypool and Minkah Fitzpatrick threw down. There was a scrap. There was a there was a fight that drew a lot of people's attention. And Tony, we've seen a few fights, and I've talked about this a little bit during the year. Dan Moore Jr. was fighting Cam Hayward several times throughout camp. But I will say this. Anyone who's followed the Steelers through training camp also knows that Cam Hayward, he kind of picks at rookie offensive linemen and young offensive linemen every year. That's his thing.
Yeah.
Like he tests them, and he's also the leader. He's like, hey, I'm going to see how strong you are, how tough you are, how much you can take. And that's what he does. I mean, Minkah's only been here, 3 seasons? This is his second training camp. So, this is different for him because whereas he might be becoming a leader, but man, for Minkah to be in a fight, something had to go down. But I'm really intrigued because the Steelers have been all about, we're going to be more physical. We're going to be more dominant. We're going to take over more games this way. Yep. And some of that may yield itself to, we're going to get into more fights afterwards.
And look, I know you can't talk about the actual specifics of the fight itself. I was not there. I have no inside information. And I can just say this. Look, Chris, you and I have been to multiple training camps. Fights happen. They get reported as little blips along the way. Look, I'll just say this. This is not being reported as a blip as I'm watching it, as I'm watching how you're reporting it, and I know you were there, how I've watched some of your colleagues report this.
Yeah.
I know you can't say anything, but
everybody tweeted about it.
Yes, it was asked about. They asked every single person who was interviewed after practice, including Tomlin, and Tomlin did not want to talk about it very clearly to me. And I know you can't say this. It seems to me that this was not just your run-of-the-mill training camp fight. That this was an actual altercation between these players. And like you said, look, you want to see that out of this team right now because they do need to get more physical, right? I mean, especially, I think on the offensive side, they were so soft last year at times. When it came to. We know the offensive line and just their inability to get even a short yardage, a 1-yard gain. I mean, it came back to bite them in that playoff game against Cleveland. It's a big part of them not going for it on 4th and 1 there because they probably weren't going to. Let's be honest, they probably weren't going to convert it. And then the drops from the wide receivers and whatnot. I wasn't there. I didn't see how bad the fight was. Right, I don't know what happened, but I'll say this: I do like to see the idea that this team is getting a little more physical. I like the idea. Look, Chase Claypool was involved. I want my number one receiver, my big 6'4" guy, to want to be a little physical out there, to have a little nasty to his game. I think that can't hurt. And certainly Minkah was the other guy in this, I'm guessing. It sounds like.
No, it was reported that it was Claypool versus Minkah. That was confirmed by Kevin Dotson.
Okay. I want to see both those guys being physical. I don't want them to hate each other, right? I don't want them to hate each other, but
right. You still need locker room harmony.
Of course. But if they want to throw a little bit, I don't dislike it.
I don't dislike it. The big thing that we always have to be concerned about is if there's a fight, everyone's being safe and no one actually gets hurt and things like that. And you also have to be prepared for the regular season when things don't go your way or someone pushes your buttons. You can't afford to get into a fight. And those are two players individually. If the Steelers lose either one of those guys, there's a problem. There's a big problem.
Yeah.
So, and I look at this and I say, like, man, Chase Claypool, Minkah Fitzpatrick, neither one of you can afford to be out of a game for more than 5 plays. The Steelers need both of these guys on both sides of the ball. So I wonder if it's a lesson that they will learn and they will be like, hey, if a guy says something about your mama, you cannot react like that. You can say, okay, I'm going to get you on the next play, but you cannot be in that position.
It's a fine line that this team kind of has to straddle, right? Which is the idea that they want to be more physical. This is how they're going to win football games in 2021. They're not going to throw the ball 50 times and be this kind of finesse, short, catch and run style of offense anymore that they were back last year. But they are still going to have to be the kind of nasty defense that will shut you down like they were last season. That's how they're going to have to win games, by running the ball and being physical offensively and continuing to impose their will defensively. And I think when you have an offense that wants to be that kind of physical style, and you have a defense that has become that physical team, this can be the end result of it. And like you talked about, look, there's you can't have this in the game, but we're not in a game right now. We're at practice, and so I think this is that kind of line that this team is going to have to kind of straddle a little bit, and it's going to be Tomlin and the coaching staff to keep these players from going over that line.
Absolutely. Now, the group that mainly that physicality applies to is the offensive line. And there was a key change that was noted that happened at practice on Monday in that offensive line. We'll get to that in the second segment. But first, I got to talk to you guys about our sponsors at BetOnline, betonline.ag. It's that time of the year again, and all eyes are turning now to football as teams are back on the gridiron and ready to start their football seasons. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. Get all the updates on odds, props, and contests, including the $500,000 NFL Mega Contest and the $200,000 NFL Survivor Contest, both open right now at BetOnline. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 100% welcome bonus. Be sure to take advantage of their opening day super promo, which is make a bet on the Thursday, September 9th season opener between the Super Bowl champion Buccaneers and the Dallas Cowboys. And if you lose, your wager will be completely refunded up to $25. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports, from football to basketball to boxing, right down to horse racing. Don't wait to take advantage of all the great offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline.ag, your online sportsbook experts. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Tony Serino for a Tony Tuesday. Now, Tony, before we get into the Steelers thing, we were talking about betting with betonline.ag and the things that go on with them. All right, did you put any money down on the Jake Paul fight? I just got to know.
I did not, but I did have a wager this weekend. I had Illinois +7 in college football. I liked that bet a lot. And by the way, if you're looking for another Tony lock of the week, I like North Carolina this week against Virginia Tech. I believe the line is 5.5. North Carolina by 5.5. Like that one. I like Sam Howell. North Carolina. Yeah, like that team.
A little shaky on Virginia Tech this year as well, as a guy who covers ACC football. So that's definitely going to be interesting. But anyways, let's get back into some Steelers talk. Let's talk about the offensive line. So it was confirmed after practice by Kevin Dotson when I asked him, and he said, Chukuma Okorafor, who had been at left tackle all through training camp, was now at right tackle, where he was all last season. And guess who was at left tackle? Dan Moore Jr. And that was very interesting. We are not allowed to say where Zach Banner was because that was not reported after practice. So there's that. But we will say that those two guys were lining up in practice together at offensive tackle. Now, Kevin Dotson said some interesting things. He said, one, he's like, I like Dan being next to me because we know how to be physical. He talked about how they're getting used to each other, but he also said he's kind of used to Chooks too. He's used to whoever lines up next to him, and he feels like there's a confidence in this offensive line that yields itself to being like, hey, this group is going to be good. And, I look at said confidence, I'm kind of like, I ain't mad at you. And there was a guy on Twitter, a guy who's been a fan of this show. He's tweeted at both of us. His name is Dave Fairchild.
Yeah.
He tweeted at me in the middle of Monday and said, ESPN says that the Chiefs appear to have fixed their offensive line problem by rebuilding their offensive line, which will feature 5 new starters across the board. And he says, kind of funny then how the Steelers having 5 new starters is considered a big problem and not a fix. Now, to be fair, the Chiefs did add first round offensive lineman guys. The Steelers added more middle round guys, but to a point, we have no idea how any of these offensive lines are going to play. We can speculate based off of pedigree and where a guy was drafted or how much a guy was signed for. But the bottom line is that we've seen several times not so expensive offensive lines have won out in the end. Case in point, the Jaguars offensive line in the 2017 AFC playoff game when they beat the Steelers, they didn't have the pedigree of a Marquise Pouncey or a David DeCastro or, a Marcus Gilbert or Alejandro Villanueva and Ramon Foster. They didn't have that kind of a group, but they still performed very well throughout that year. So to me, I kind of agree with the sentiment from our fan Dave, that I'm not counting this offensive line out just because they're new.
No, absolutely not. And this is a point. I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you and Dave, because this is a point I've tried to make going all the way back to after the draft, which is, look, the Steelers are changing out their entire offensive line from where it was a season ago. The silliest thing for the Steelers to do would be to bring back all 5 guys and just say, well, we're going to run it back with these same 5 guys and think that we're going to have a better offensive line. You will not. You change it out. Now, look, did they change it the same way they changed it the Chiefs did? No, the Chiefs got, I believe, Joe Thuney, and they got Orlando Brown, and they made massive investments monetarily in their offensive line.
And that is different. They made big moves to make it different.
It is different. But to sit here and say that the Steelers are doing it the wrong way, or that it is a guarantee that this offensive line, the Steelers, when I hear people make the declarative statement, the Steelers have a bad offensive line, I have to laugh, because how do you know that?
How do you know? How do you know?
It is a giant question mark. If you want to put a question mark next to the Steelers offensive line, by all means. Now, what I've seen out of Dan Moore, and I said this to you last week when I was on the show, I was surprised that Dan Moore was not in a position battle with Okorafor for that left tackle spot. Now, I don't know that he still is. I don't know what, again, no one knows what's happening right now with Zach Banner. So is this more about something with Banner than it is about how Okorafor was playing left tackle? I don't know, but I will say this. I like Dan Moore as my left tackle. I know some people on Twitter today are, doing this sky is falling thing with the offensive line. Oh, the tackle position is such a disaster. If I based on what I've seen in just 4 preseason games, I haven't seen any training camp practices. I would have started Dan Moore day one. I mean, I would have started Dan. I know he's a rookie at left tackle, but the tape he's put out there is far better than what I've seen of years of Okorafor tape. And I want to build on the skill set that I have with Dan Moore rather than trying to, make this Okorafor thing work.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you as much as I'm an Okorafor guy in the sense that I've seen his potential since his days at Western Michigan. I'm like, man, he has the feet. He has the pass set. He drops back and he seems to understand what's going on, but the guy just doesn't know how to turn it on and be nasty and physical and bury his opponents. He hasn't done that yet.
Yeah.
And this was his season to do it. This was his 4th year in the league. This was his, he was presumed a starting position in the offense. This was his year to come out and be like, you know what? I'm going to show you how bad I am. You ain't bad. You ain't nothing. And he didn't show that. He hasn't looked dominant or even particularly good in any of the preseason games. And Dan Moore has. I mean, even PFF, who notoriously downplays most successes by Steelers, was like, no, Dan Moore Jr. was actually one of the best offensive linemen in preseason.
In the whole preseason. Yeah.
Him and Dotson. Steelers, but all offensive linemen.
Him and Dotson, I believe, I'm going to look it up right now, but I believe him and Dotson are like 1 and 2 in all of preseason this year.
That's crazy.
It is crazy, but
I never thought I'd see them do that.
No, PFF. By the way, PFF, for those of you who don't know, based in Cincinnati, Ohio. Not a shock.
Shocker.
No, but look, the thing about this offensive line is it's so young now, Chris. I mean, if this is how the line is gonna, if this is how it's gonna be, right? If Banner can't come back, and you've got a rookie at left tackle, you've got a second-year guy at left guard, a rookie at right at center, and then at right tackle, you've got a Corfor who's kind of a vet now in his 4th year. Mm-hmm. This is a super young offensive line.
Super young. I mean, Trey Turner's the old head at 28.
Yeah. Wait, Trey Turner's only 28?
Yes.
Oh, I would have told you he's like 33. It just
right.
feels like he's up there. Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
But
so
that's the whole point. This is a young group.
And this is one to build on it. And I think Steeler fans need to be cautious as we get into week 1. Right, there's going to be a lot written right after that Bills game, no matter what happens, good or bad. That if they come out and Najee Harris runs for $120, right, that the offensive line is great and the Steelers have done it. Look, this team, and if they don't, and if it's Najee Harris runs for 40 and Ben gets sacked 5 times and the Steelers look bad on offense, oh, this offensive line is a disaster. Look, this is an offensive line that's young and going to be they're going to have to build on this over time, and it's going to be much more about where this thing is in weeks 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 than it is 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's with a young offensive line, there's going to be a lot to learn about communicating with one another, picking up different defensive schemes and the different blitzes that are coming at them, or the twists and stunts and whatnot. They're going to have a lot to learn. There may be some growing pains early in the season, but I got to tell you, I'm excited of where this team is going right now on the offensive line, especially with Dan Moore on that left side.
No, I'm excited too. I think that there's one thing I do think they have down. They do have a physical group.
Yes.
Now, whether that group is coordinated, that's the next question. I wrote about that last week on DKPittsburghSports.com for my Carter's Classroom. But, being gel as an offensive line, being able to understand who your teammates are and when you need to help them and make sure that you're in sync, that is a whole extra, debate. That's a whole extra level that you need to work together and build chemistry on. But you can show effort and be physical, and they have all done that across the board, except maybe Chukwuma Okorafor. But that's one thing that they have in spades is guys who want to be physical, guys who want to impose their will. Whether they can do that as a unit, we will find out in short order, because they need to find this out before they play the Buffalo Bills in week 1, which is less than 2 weeks away now. Crazy to think, but Steelers football is almost back. Now, before we move on, we got some more topics to finish out the show. I want to tell you guys about our sponsors at rockauto.com. Save time and money when you go to visit rockauto.com. And why choose to spend 30%, 50%, or even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? For example, you could spend up to $353 for a Honda Odyssey fuel pump. But if you go in, just type in Honda Odyssey, look up for fuel pumps at rockauto.com, you can get it for $216. $353, $216. Clearly, Rock Auto is in the better there. Rock Auto is a family business with serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto's prices are reliably low for every customer, and they have everything you could need, whether it's brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, or even new carpet for your car or truck. Go explore the easy-to-use website today to find their solution for your auto part needs. Visit rockauto.com right now and see all their parts available for your car or truck. And remember to write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box, so that they know that we sent you. DirecTV also is one of our sponsors. They have their new DirecTV Stream feature. Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another device that lets you stream your favorite shows. Then, if you're not watching sports highlights, or you're watching sports highlights on your phone, maybe you're also using a neighbor's subscription service or a best friend's login for the good stuff that you want. Well, let me make that simpler for you. I want to tell you about a simple way that you can get all your entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite shows, sports, movies, and all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes, no need to buy another device ever again, and the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. And as you know, on the Locked On Steelers podcast, when we get 2 back-to-back live reads, we keep it rolling. So we're going to keep it rolling with Tony Serino to wrap up the show. Now, Tony, I got to ask you, leading off. Now, we're going to get to roster cuts, because roster cuts are due 4 p.m. Tuesday, August 31st.
Yeah.
But we will know who the Steelers' 53-man roster is. Then now we do know Jordan Berry has been cut, so Presley Harvin has officially won the punting position. Christian Kuntz is the new long snapper. They released Cameron Canaday. Not too many people care about that. I mean, long snapper.
It's a long snapper battle,
As long as you don't mess up, they're fine by you, right? But there's still sensible with the cuts. We're gonna get to the cuts in the sex. I want to.
You have bigger news. You have bigger Steeler news than the cuts.
I mean,
something even more important to talk about.
It's only because it's the surge.
I can't wait to hear what this is. I mean,
Twitter,
this is I'm on the edge of my seat, Chris.
If you can see my face right now on YouTube, you know that I am dreading to talk about this. But here we go. Twitter, showed a video of Juju on TikTok doing the milk crate challenge. And what was great was I was at Steelers practice and I was at Pitt practice and I had no time for this nonsense. I was like, I'm watching these guys play. They're executing, they're fighting, they're doing all these things. Like I had no reason to care about that. And then I see someone tweet about it. And I'm like, like all the great news today is going to be overshadowed by Juju doing the milk crate challenge. Now I will say this. The milk crate challenge. It's dumb. I'm sorry. And I get Juju does the trends and he does stuff for TikTok. But if I was a teammate and I saw Juju going up some milk crates, I would immediately run and snatch him off of them because I'm just like
carefully snatch him off.
Carefully snatch him off because you don't want to hurt him. But I mean, and he, to his credit, he made it through. He did the whole thing, and I was like, man, and he looked delicate doing it. Again, to do that milk crate challenge, you got to be athletic. You got to be light on your feet. You got to have really good balance, which is why I guess he felt he could do it. But why even risk it, man? I feel people on this one. Like I am all for the dancing, the logo dancing. The goofing off, the
play
skits,
Fortnite, play Call of Duty, go to a gaming house.
That.
Who cares?
Don't do the stuff that if the milk crate tumbles, you fall to the ground, and if you twist your ankle, if you do something, you out week 1, maybe worse.
Right. Right. This is what I don't understand about it. You know, my dad used to tell me when I was a kid, especially when I was going to do something stupid, Tony, what good can come of this? Okay, and Juju, what good comes of doing the milk crate challenge, okay? Because you did the milk crate challenge. Congratulations. You're in the news for not the reason you wanted to be, okay? No one's sitting there going, wow, Juju's so athletic. Oh, my goodness. I can't believe he did it. Oh, the feat of strength. You know, everyone's knocking at his door to give him a $15 million a year deal next year because he did the freaking milk crate challenge. No. And the alternative here, Juju, okay, is that you fall. And like and those of you who have watched a lot of these milk crate challenge videos, guilty. A lot of these people get hurt very badly. If you want to see gruesome injury, just search milk crate challenge because they are out there and these people break legs, arms. Okay. If that had happened to Juju in a contract year, in a year, Chris, where he went to the open market and he didn't get paid, he tried to get paid and did not. It wasn't like the offers he turned down were for vastly more money than what the Steelers gave him. So again, if I'm his agent right now, I'm telling Juju, what are you thinking? You are trying to lose yourself money by doing things like this. Because if you had an injury that had kept you out for any amount of time, okay, you have to go out there and you have to ball out this year because you are in a contract year. If you cost yourself any of that money by doing a stupid TikTok video, very, very silly.
But all that being said, Juju's still a man, right?
I mean, listen, it's awesome. It's the best year. I mean, it's my favorite. I mean, listen, it's fantastic. Listen, this is another one of those things that is going to blow over a week from now. No one's going to care about this. Thank goodness he did it. It's silly. Thank goodness he actually accomplished it. Yes, thank goodness. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, not that he did it, but that he completed it.
I was like, whoa.
But he completed it.
But the point is, he is through it safe and he didn't get hurt. But as a guy, I've been a pro Juju guy, and I still am. I think he's a phenomenal receiver. I got into it with James Rapine from Locked On Bengals. He said that Tyler Boyd was a better slot receiver than Juju Smith-Schuster. I was kind of like, I don't know about that, Chief. And Tyler Boyd's a Pittsburgh kid. Like I love Tyler Boyd. He's from here. He went to Pitt here. I cover Pitt. I'm a Pitt alumnus as well as a Cheney alumnus. But I sit here and I'm like, no, Juju. I've been a major Juju defender, but even I was.
Tyler Boyd's a better slot receiver if you want to win 4 games a year. But
exactly, Juju helps you win games, and we've seen that. He's also the youngest receiver to 2,000 yards in NFL history. I mean, I don't know if that counts for anything. But point being, point being, Juju, just don't do that one. Like, dance wherever you
this
want.
That's right. This is remember what I talked about earlier, the line that you don't want to cross. There's a meme line that you don't want to cross, and this is like, this is not the one. This is not the one, Juju.
Yeah. No, Patreon. All right, now let's go to this. I want to get your last sentence. I don't like doing full 53-man projections because it's so tedious. You gotta pick and choose, and then you say a guy's gonna get cut, and then the guy's like, affronted by it. And I feel like forcing us to make these judgment calls when we don't see everything. We see training camp, we see games, but we don't see the backroom conversations. We don't see the meetings. We don't see who's doing it. And we don't have the evaluations of the coaches who are tracking these guys. I mean, there's chips literally in these guys' helmets that can determine how fast they're moving, where they are, what they're doing at all times. And
there's medical stuff that's going to come into play here too. Like, how is Mollett? How, Dobbs is, his toe is hurt or whatever, that stuff's going to come into play.
Right. All those things happen. Now, here's my question to you. In this 53-man roster, it seems to me it's going to come down to, they're going to keep 5 cornerbacks. They always do. Yeah. You got to keep at least 5 in today's NFL, sometimes 6. But the 2 positions that I think are at odds with each other are the linebackers and running backs.
Yep.
Because at running back, you have 4 guys you're keeping. You're keeping Najee. You're keeping Derek Watt. You're keeping Kalen Ballage, who to me is the solidified number 2 back.
Yep.
The 4th guy is an option between Benny Snell or Anthony McFarland or Jalen Samuels or Trey Edmonds. To me, I think the Steelers are going to go with Benny Snell. Now, there's been a lot of hoopla over Anthony McFarland. He's fast. Matt Canada likes him. He brings some gadget plays into your repertoire. He can help you in the return game. But I think they like Benny Snell as a more complete back at this point in time. And I don't think they keep 5 running backs because I think they need to keep 10 linebackers. And that's whenever I do like my own 53-man roster privately, I'm like, that's where I find my pinch to be the most. Do I keep 4 running backs? Do I keep 10 linebackers? And with today's NFL, I think that they need more linebackers to rotate and be healthy, especially with, you saw, Devin Bush went down last year, then Robert Spillane went down, then Vince Williams went down, and they don't want to go through that again. So they want to have 5 guys on the inside and 5 guys on the outside, and that's where I see it. But what say you? Do you think there's a pinch there, and which position would you pinch at? Or is the pinch in a completely different part of the roster?
I saw Cavoli put his out where he had only the Steelers keeping only 2 tight ends, and that's how he got to the 10 linebacker and 5 running back, if you include Watt, together. I just don't see that, especially given that the Steelers are likely going to run more 12 this year. You can't run 12 and only have 2 tight ends on your roster. What if one of them goes down?
Right. One of them goes down, then the formation's out.
Yeah, or you're going to run Derek Watt in one of those, but then every defense knows, like, okay, well, he's not getting the ball on a route, so yeah. I mean, look, keeping 10 at the linebacker / edge. I mean, you almost have to, because they're like, look, and I know the linebackers. I want to say they're brimming with talent, but then I think about that linebacker room, and it's like, well, okay, brimming with talent is maybe not the right phrase there. Some guys you want to keep. Some guys you want to keep around. Like, I like what Marcus Allen has done year over year in his switch from safety to linebacker. I think Buddy Johnson's a guy who just, you don't want to try and stash him on the practice squad because it would be silly to use a 4th-round pick on a guy who ends up on another roster. I think at this point, what's his name? Jameer Jones. Jameer Jones is an absolute roster lock. Roche versus Marsh is an interesting one. I think they're going to keep Marsh because they like him.
Yeah, he's a vet that can play special teams. Roche is learning special teams, but
yeah.
I will say also, Jameer Jones has looked better on special teams than Quincy Roche.
I think he's got 4 special teams tackles are. I think PFF has him charted at 4. By the way, I want to correct something I said earlier in the show. I said that Dan Moore was one of the highest rated linemen. He is as a left tackle. As a right tackle, PFF has his grades far lower. He has struggled a little bit more on the right side.
And he even admitted that publicly. He was like, I'm not sure about that position yet.
Yeah. Going over to the running back thing, I understand why you want to keep Benny Snell. That 17 run was impressive the other night. But I think that for me, I just like that McFarland gives me I've always been this guy, Chris, the different kind of back guy.
I know where you're going.
Yeah. Just for me, like if I have Najee Harris and Kalen Ballage and Benny Snell, it's like, okay, I have 3 of very similar type players.
Power runners that can get it done between the tackles.
Yes. I don't have that kind of, home run hitter. And I'm with you on the McFarland thing. Like while he has the home run ability, he's a bit and I don't want to compare him to Dree Archer, but he's the one guy that comes to mind of like, Dree
Man,
Archer
you went
also
Dree
had
Archer.
Dree Archer also had a
Madden
home run
legend.
ability, and everybody knew he wasn't going to hit it. It's just like
Nah.
Dree Archer couldn't swing the bat, so there was no chance he was going to hit a home run. He had a lot of power, but couldn't swing a bat. I feel the same way with McFarland a little bit, where I just feel like the game is still so fast for him. He processes everything a million miles an hour that I never feel like he actually is the home run threat that you think he should represent. So I understand what you're saying. I would still keep McFarland, even though I just went over that whole thing about how McFarland can't be a home run hitter. I would still keep him because I just want that kind of player on the team.
So you would keep McFarland over Snell, or you would keep all of them and skip out on a linebacker?
No, I would cut Benny Snell at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think Balaj has done more.
He's the number 2. To me,
Yeah.
There's no question in my eyes. He is number 2 running back. They will put him. If Najee needs a breather, 29's going in on offense.
Does Snell play special teams?
Yes, he does, and that's the other thing about it is that he helps there. And when you run those special teams, you earn some spots. McFarland's main special team role is as a returner. They got that in Ray McCloud.
Yeah,
and Deontay Johnson.
That's right. So, that's the one to watch for me. If you're watching cuts as you're listening to this, the running back position kind of is going to tell you everything. If they keep 5, then a surprise linebacker is getting cut. Well, it's quote unquote surprise. If they only keep 4, including TJ Watt in this, then they're likely going to keep all those linebackers, and we'll see which running back gets the axe.
We will see that. Tony, thanks as always for joining the Locked On Steelers podcast. We always love having you here, man. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Steeler Country. You can find me on YouTube. AFC North Talk is a roundtable show all about the AFC North. I represent the Pittsburgh Steelers on that show. We are on break currently. We are coming back on September the 5th, I want to say. First Tuesday in September, I believe we'll be back. So give that a look. AFC North Talk on YouTube. And you can also find my YouTube show, Steeler Country with Tony Serino.
Absolutely do check Tony out. He's great. He knows what he's talking about. I know that's why I bring him here. And he's also hilarious. He's highly entertaining, as you see on this show. Tony, thanks as always for joining us. I'm Chris Carter, your host here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques, as you see below. You can also read my work at dkpittsburghsports.com. You can listen to me here on Locked On Steelers and on the Friday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Thanks so much for listening to this show. Remember, you can find us on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Odyssey. And if you leave us a 5-star review with a positive comment, you get a special shout out at the end of the show. Like this person, Rockin' One Robin, who says, every day listen with a 5-star review, says, listening to this podcast has become part of my morning routine. Thank you, Rockin' One Robin. We appreciate that. Wake up, turn this podcast on, walk my dog. I feel like I've learned so much listening to Chris and his guests. Listen, Rockin' One Robin, that's what we try to do. We try to teach, we try to learn, but we also try to entertain with our stuff here. So we appreciate your 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You want your shout out, go on Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review, make sure it's up there with a comment. I will read you and your comment with your 5-star review right here. Be back tomorrow with more from Dean and Josh on our Wednesday episode of Locked On Steelers. We'll be explaining who did get cut from the 53-man roster and going over what happens more at Steelers practice. Stay tuned for more on your Pittsburgh Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.